Hi, you guys, and welcome back to another true crime. And my mic's off. Oh. Hi, you guys, and welcome back to another true crime and makeup time video. If you're new here, my name is Zara, and I post a new true crime video every single week. So if you enjoy these videos and love makeup and true crime, go ahead and hit the like button and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. How are you guys? Are you super excited for Christmas like I am? Look, let's talk about these guys for a second. I have been trying to order stuff online for ages. We are finally out of lockdown here in Victoria, but the postal system is just like, I have ordered things back in September that I still haven't received yet. So pretty sure my Christmas decor background was not coming anytime soon. So this is what's going to be my Christmas background for now. I hope it's not too ghetto. I had like a super cute like snow theme, like even though in Australia it's like very hot during Christmas Day, but it was going to be very cute, but this is what I'm stuck with. I hope you guys are having a great end of the year. This time is always super stressful, I feel like, but at the same time I get really excited. So I don't know, I feel like the holidays are going to go in like an instant. So I want to really make the most of it this year and be present. Let me know if you guys have any like holiday resolutions, like not New Year's, but like during the holiday period. Do you guys have any like goals or you want to like accomplish something? Let me know in the comments. So today we're going to be talking about the case of Susan Powell's, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you true crime fans will know this one. It's actually one of the very first cases that I ever heard about. It's very messed up, I would say. It's a pretty messed up case. It's a very interesting case, but it's also kind of messed up when you kind of delve into the lives of some, like how other people live. You know what I mean? Like you kind of got to know a little bit about this couple and about their family. And it's also a very frustrating case. I would definitely say the ending, I guess, is very disappointing to say the least. So yeah, let's get into the case and let's talk about what happened to Susan Powell's. So Susan Powell, she was born Susan Cox, and she was married to a man named Josh Powell. But I think to really understand this case, let's begin talking about Josh's father, Stephen Powell, who was a sick piece of you know what, and he actually played quite a big role in this case. So let's talk about him first. So Stephen Powell was born in 1976, and his then wife, Terica Powell, who was from Washington, actually had 5 children together. They had 3 sons and 2 daughters. But even with this really big family, their marriage was highly dysfunctional. They raised their kids in the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And according to the divorce documents that Terica had filed in 1992, the main issues in their marriage were mainly Stephen's lack of, I guess, commitment to their faith. He didn't like the Latter-day Saints church, and he didn't like the way that Terica was raising their children. In particular, he didn't like the way that Terica was raising his sons. He believed that his way was better, and he kind of had an idea of how he wanted them to turn out, I guess. So because he was such an amazing parent, he decided that he was going to parent his kids, or I guess his sons, the way that he wanted to. So he ended up sharing his porn collection with them. Yeah. And he basically didn't set any like behavioral limits on them. They were basically just allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. And as a result of this amazing parenting, his son, Joshua Powell, actually ended up killing a pet, I think gerbil or hamster or something like that, that belonged to one of his sisters. And then he also attempted suicide. And he actually also threatened his mother, Terica, with a butcher knife. Joshua, like his father, did not view women as equal to him. So clearly, Stephen knew what he was doing with parenting. He was raising great children, huh? So speaking of this amazing man, Joshua Powell was born on 20th January 1976, and in 1998, He was living in Seattle and studying at the University of Washington. And it was at this university that he began a relationship with a woman named Catherine Everett, whom he actually met at an LDS church event. And the two of them, they were living their life, being boyfriend and girlfriend, and they ended up moving into an apartment together. And it was when the two of them moved into this apartment that Joshua ended up becoming really possessive towards Catherine. Catherine would later on say that he would be super possessive. He would set limitations to where she went, who she spoke to, especially with her family, like when and where she could see them. And if she was going to visit them, she couldn't go alone. Like Joshua had to come too. He had to know about it and he had to come as well. One time, Catherine went to Utah to visit a friend of hers, and she didn't end up telling Joshua. And while she was actually on this trip to see her friend, she decided that she wasn't going to return back to Seattle to be with Joshua, and she ended up breaking up with him over the phone. So fast forward, Joshua then meets Susan Cox, who was a classmate at his LDS church course that he was attending. And they actually met during a dinner party that Josh hosted at his apartment in November of the year 2000. And now they only met in November, they literally met each other in November. But they ended up dating and really falling for each other, and then ended up getting married super quickly in April of the year 2001. So what's that, 5 months? Joshua had a bachelor's degree in business, and he worked at a number of companies over the following years. And Susan, she was a trained cosmetologist. Now, they were a super young couple, and they, got married super quickly as well. So they weren't doing amazing financially. So following their wedding, Joshua and Susan ended up moving in with Joshua's father, Stephen Powell, at his home in South Hill, Washington, just to save some money and kind of get, a head start on their life. It was then that Stephen, the creep, ended up developing a super obsessive infatuation with his son's wife, Susan, which only became worse the more that they lived together. They were living in the same home. So Stephen, he would follow Susan around the house with a camcorder. He used a little tiny hand mirror to spy on Susan when she would use the bathroom. So I'm guessing he would slip it under the door. I never understand how those things work, but I'm pretty sure from what I've seen in movies, they slip it under the door and then I don't know, something. Tell me if you know in the comments. But that's what he did. He stole her underwear from the laundry that when she would do laundry. He would read her journals, and then he would even dedicate love songs to her online, but he used a fake name, but it was him. He had a notebook where he would write some sick shit about his daughter-in-law. Some of the things he wrote, I'm going to read to you. The fact is, I can hardly control myself when it comes to her. He even wondered if his obsession might be considered sociopathic. I mean, who looks under the bathroom door with a mirror? Stephen would explain in his journals he has never lusted for a woman as much as he had for Susan. He fantasized how he would love to kiss her lips, and he often wrote about how his love for Susan was his greatest problem, but also his greatest pleasure. During one entry in his journals, he wrote how he would record Susan, and then he would later use those recordings when he was pleasuring himself. Throughout all these journal entries, some of them which I read, he would often talk about how, their 31 age difference would be an issue. And he would also cut out newspaper clippings about people having relationship problems about age gaps. And then he would save those as a way to maybe convince Susan later on. Who knows? Even though he said that his infatuation for Susan was his greatest problem, he still took steps to try and make this relationship happen. This relationship with his son's wife. He somehow believed that it could be possible that he could somehow have a future with Susan. He wrote about how he would think about selling his home because Susan had once mentioned to him that it was too dark. And he would even say that, if Susan agreed to marry him, then he would consider buying a new home. You know, the same Susan who was married to his son. Yeah, did I mention that? In one entry, he wrote how he enjoys taking, you know, video recordings and photos of pretty women of all different ages and shorts and skirts, and how he often used those images to please himself. And look, I don't think Susan was the problem. I think this guy is just a creepazoid, and that's just who he is. And he just had a beautiful woman living, you know, within close proximity to him. So he just developed this infatuation because it was like always there for him. You know what I mean? Like he didn't have to go outside, take some photos, sneak into public bathrooms. He could just do it at home. He truly believed that he was in love with Susan. He believed that his love for Susan was, you know, wholesome and pure, and he had these rights. You know, these were his rights to love someone. He literally believes that it's pure and beautiful and normal. He's very delusional. He's definitely a predator. He invades her. He exploits her space. Like when you're at home, that's your private space. That's your safe space. He 100% invades her privacy, exploits her, and he has no difficulty about this, no issue with this. There's this video where he like records himself, and he's talking about how Susan is sick and he ended up giving her a foot rub. And you guys just need to watch this. If I can add the video to this, I will. Otherwise, I'll leave a link in the description below. But oh my God, like he's talking about this foot rub like it's pure, like I don't even know how to explain it. Like it is the most sensual thing that he's ever experienced in his life. And first of all, I wouldn't let my father-in-law like give me a foot rub. That's so weird. But you know, maybe they had that relationship, but I don't think Susan was thinking of it that way. Like you guys need to, I'll link it.
I offered to rub her feet, to rub her toes, to give her some stimulation. That went on. I probably rubbed her feet, her toes, her beautiful feet. She has such pretty feet. Of course, everything about her is pretty, beautiful. And I know she felt it. I mean, I know she couldn't have missed it. She's not naive either, I know, from what I've read in her journals. That girl is not naive. When I started massaging her legs, I would have loved to go all the way up her legs, but I did do her calves because her feet were resting in my crotch, so I sort of rubbed her calves. She didn't seem to mind at all having me that close. I mean, I was close. I was touching her with my crotch. It's hard to remember everything I did. Man, I love that woman. She is so beautiful. Can't even get enough of her. Can't get enough of looking at her. She's so pretty.
So I guess this foot rub, you know, confirmed the fact that Susan felt the exact same way that Stephen was feeling about her. So in 2003, he ends up going to Susan and telling her like, look, I have feelings for you. And he begins to like confess his love for her and like tell her about everything that he's been thinking. Susan, who obviously was very shocked, not only shocked, she completely rejected him. But what's crazy is that this encounter where he confesses his, you know, love for Susan was actually captured unintentionally by Stephen's like camera. So obviously after this, Susan is so creeped out. I'm sure she tells Joshua, and they decide to move interstate, mainly so that Susan could distance herself from her creepy father-in-law, Stephen. And he actually later tried to kiss Susan even after she rejected him. So they ended up relocating to Salt Lake City, and Susan ended up getting a job at the Wells Fargo Bank. And her and Joshua ended up having two sons, Charles born in 2005 and Braden born in 2007. Now, I'm sure having your father-in-law be in love with you would cause strife in a marriage. But Susan and Josh had their own issues to deal with in their marriage, mainly due to the fact that Josh was also beginning to reject the LDS church exactly like his father did in his marriage to his wife, to his mom. Another issue for Josh and Susan was their finances, and this happens with a lot of marriages. Like the number one reason for divorces, I don't know if it's in the US or Australia, is finance. Like money causes a lot of problems, guys. Josh was very reckless with his spending and did not save the money that they both had worked so hard for. And in 2007, after their second son was born, they even had to declare bankruptcy because Josh had over $200,000 in debts. Susan's friends also described Joshua's extremely controlling behavior towards Susan and their family, which prompted Susan to begin to not trust Joshua. You know, she felt he wasn't protecting his family. He was being reckless and he wasn't thinking of them. She was also upset at the fact that Josh, you know, kept in contact with his father, Stephen, even after his multiple sexual advances towards his wife, you know? Like, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that Josh should have just cut off contact with his father? I mean, considering he was so inappropriate, and if he didn't care, maybe he should have. But at the same time, it's his father, you know? I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think he should have? I definitely would. I mean, if he doesn't give a shit, why should I give a shit about you? But it's more so the fact that, you know, it's your father and he was closer to his father than his mother anyway. But still, like, that's your wife, right? Like, so at this point, their marriage obviously is not doing well. So Susan ends up writing like a secret will. And she wrote statements in her diary saying that she wanted it documented that this marriage was in extreme turmoil. And one of the most creepiest things that she wrote in her diary was, "If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one." Like, what a weird thing to say. I never found any like allegations of abuse between, against Josh by Stephen. Against Josh by Susan. But why would you say something like that? Like, why would you be afraid of dying? Like, do they just say, like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, would he have just mentioned something, said something that sounded like it was a threat to kill? Or was she afraid of someone else? Like, I wonder what she meant by that. And then in July of 2008, she films this video where she's like walking around the house and she's documenting like all their assets and she's talking about who bought what. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's like she's almost preparing a will or kind of like leaving a testimony behind, you know, a testimony of some sort of like, if something happens to me, check this out. So fast forward to the morning of December 6th, 2009, Susan ends up going to the LDS church for their normal church services with her two sons, Charles and Braden. And obviously, because Josh was having issues with the church, he didn't attend. So they did their normal church services and then they come back home. And then once they return home from church, a neighbor comes to the house and just spends like the afternoon with them. And this neighbor leaves at around 5 p.m. Now, after this day, that neighbor was the last person to see Susan apart from anyone inside the Powell household. So at first, on December 2008, the entire Powell family, and when I say Powell family, I'm talking about Joshua, Susan, and the two boys. So on December 7th, 2009, the entire Powell family was considered missing or reported as missing by their relatives because no one could get a hold of Susan or Josh. So after they were reported missing, Joshua's mother, Terica, and Joshua's sister, Jennifer, they end up going to the Powell house to look for the family because it was reported that on that morning, Braden and Charles were not dropped off at daycare. So when Terica and Jennifer end up going to the house and they go to the house, no one's at home, they can't get in touch with anyone. At this point, they end up calling the police. They're really worried. I mean, if family members were just not answering calls for that long, and then considering they have two young children, of course, you're going to panic. So the police come and they actually break into the Powell house because they start panicking that maybe the family fell victim to carbon monoxide poisoning. And if you don't know what that is usually when like, I think it's like gas heaters, they emit carbon monoxide if they're not being serviced or if they're just not in good working condition. Another way people like end their lives is by going into a garage. I still don't know how to say that, guys. Can you please tell me how I'm supposed to say that? But they go into the garage and they sit inside their car and they like close all the windows. They close the garage door, and if there's any windows in the garage, and then they roll down their car windows and they just like run the car, and that engine produces carbon monoxide, but because it's in a poorly ventilated space, they can die from that. So anyway, police go inside the house, they break into the house, and they don't find anyone there, but then they find like two big box fans blowing at like this little wet spot on the carpet. And together with this, Susan, she did not show up for work that day at the Wells Fargo bank. Her bag and her IDs and her wallet, like everything, her keys, everything was found still inside the house. Her phone was later found inside the family car. They only had one car, and it was found inside that car, the same car that Joshua had been using. So later that day at around 5 p.m., Joshua, he just returns home with the two boys, like, no big deal. And immediately, obviously, the police like take him in for questioning. He claims that he had left Susan sleeping at home at around midnight on December 7th because he had taken his boys on a camping trip to Simpson Springs. And he said he left her at midnight because that's when he left to take the boys camping at midnight in Utah, where temperatures like drop below freezing. Do you guys believe this? What do you think? Especially if you have kids. Do you believe this? Would you take your children camping at midnight? Probably not the best situation for children. So then on December 10th, police go to that campsite in Simpson Springs, but they found no evidence of a supposed campsite. Like, where's the campsite? Like, I mean, wouldn't there be some remnants of it? It hadn't even been a couple days yet, you know? They also found it super suspicious that Josh would take his, young kids, little kids out camping in basically blizzard conditions, especially when he had work the next day. And maybe I didn't mention it before, but December 7th would have been a Monday. So that means he left Susan sleeping on the couch on December 6th night, so Sunday night. But because it was midnight, it's technically December 7th, Monday. So Monday, he would be having to go to work. So if he's taking his kids at midnight, then he would have to go to work like hours later. This doesn't make sense. Also, if Joshua planned this, camping trip, why didn't he tell his boss that he wasn't coming into work the next day? His explanation to the police was that when he decided to do this camping trip, he was like, no, it's Sunday tomorrow. It's not Monday. So he was totally confused. He thought he was just taking his kids out, to a nice camping adventure Saturday at midnight, That's what he thought. He then later says that he tried to ring Susan on his way back, but it just kept going to voicemail. But remember I mentioned earlier that they found Susan's phone in the same car that Josh was driving, the same car that he would have used to take the boys camping. Okay. So going back to December 7th at around 5 p.m., he apparently spoke to his sister, Jennifer, on the phone. And obviously at this time, Jennifer was calling because they were looking for the family. So Jennifer asks him on the phone, like, where are you? And he's like, I'm at work. Like, where do you think I would be? And Jennifer on the phone was like, no, I know you're lying. Where are you? Tell me. And then he tells her, oh, I'm camping. This is my sus face. Do you like my sus face? That's when I don't trust you. So obviously Jennifer was like, what? So she goes, you need to come home right away. Susan's missing and the police are here at your house. So then he asks her, like, how much do you know? And Jennifer was like, what? And then he hangs up on her. So obviously at this point, Josh becomes a suspect in the case. And his father, Stephen, also becomes a suspect in the case because Stephen was the last person that Josh ends up calling around the time Susan went missing. So after conducting searches at the Powell residence, investigators found traces of Susan's blood on the floor of the home. They found life insurance policies on Susan's life for, I think it was $1.5 million. And they also found a handwritten letter that Susan had written, fearing for her life. In this letter, she basically was saying how she was afraid something was going to happen to her, same as when she recorded that video. So DNA results, which were actually only released in around 2013, matched one blood sample with Susan, but then they had like another blood sample where the match came up as an unknown male contributor. Now, I believe that this was Stevens. I mean, did they even test him? You know, I feel like it was Stevens. Investigators informed the media that they had planned to question Josh one more time, and they actually seized all the footage of interviews and questions that Josh had answered on what's the word? What do you call it? Like on air? What do you call it? Oh my God. Like interviews and media things that he had done with the media, right? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, so they seized all of that footage, even the ones that like hadn't been aired. And this was all handed into the police by local TV stations. And then on December 14th, 2009, like this is only like a week after Susan went missing, Josh actually ended up getting an attorney, and he became more and more uncooperative with the police. So then a few days later, he takes his sons to Puyallup in Washington, and that's where his father Stephen lived. And he just took them there to, you know, stay for the holidays. And then on January 6, 2010, he ends up coming back to the house to pack up all his belongings and his children's belongings with his brother Michael, indicating that he was moving permanently to Puyallup, Washington, and live with his father again. So prior to this, the police actually interviewed their older son, Charlie, who confirmed to the police that, you know, this camping trip that their father was describing actually took place. They actually went. But unlike Josh's version, Charles states that Susan had actually gone on this camping trip with them, but she didn't return with them on their way back. Yeah. Kids don't lie, man. Weeks after Susan's disappearance, a teacher at Charlie's school actually stated that Charlie had mentioned that his mother was in fact dead. Also, Susan's parents, Chuck and Judy Cox, claimed that while at daycare, Charles actually drew like a picture. And in this picture, he drew like a van. It was a van, and it had 3 people in it: his father, himself, and his brother Braden. And he indicated and pointed that his mommy was in the trunk. Oh my gosh. Like, I mean, if you want to like not be caught, don't do things in front of kids. You know what I mean? Like, that is insane. And in my humble opinion, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like there wasn't much investigation done on this case. Like, I feel like, I don't know, a woman goes missing and they kind of just like asking a child, like, well, where is your further information? I know Josh ended up lawyering up, but I'm sure there are ways to try and get more information. Like, otherwise, can't people just go missing and then people are like, I don't know what happened to them, and then it kind of just like ends there? That's not how it works, right? I don't know. But on another note, do you guys want to see like the most intense highlighter? This is the Jaclyn Hill one. Okay, you ready? I don't know if it's going to pick it up, but are you ready? Ooh, si senor. That was only a little bit. That was only a little taparoo. But it's even more like blinding in real life. So that's all I'm going to put on. Okay, back to the story. Till this day, what is it, 2020, Susan Powell nor her remains have ever been found. But if one of you don't think that Josh was involved in her disappearance, please leave a comment below. I would be very interested to know why you think that. So the story, unfortunately, doesn't end there. You would hope that these kids, you know, grow up. They don't know what happened to their mother. They're too young. They just don't get it. And hopefully Susan's parents would have gotten custody of these kids. But there's more to the story, so let's keep going after I put on some lashes. So in August 2012, investigators released documents showing that the actions that Joshua took after Susan's disappearance were highly suspicious. He liquidated Susan's retirement accounts. He cancelled all her doctor appointments. So she used to take like regular chiropractic sessions, and he just like cancelled all of them. And the most strange one, I believe, is he withdrew both his children from daycare. And if that wasn't bad enough, he had also spoken to coworkers about how to hide a body in an abandoned mine shaft in the desert of Utah. Now, something interesting, and which I find to be like a really creepy connection. If you guys have seen my video about the Nutty Putty Cave incident, there have been theories floating around the internet that Susan's body is inside that cave. Now, if you haven't watched that video, you may not understand the next part. But to those who have watched it, remember when the cave was sealed up with concrete at the end? Well, the cave was sealed up on the 3rd of December 2009, but Susan was last seen on the 6th of December 2009. So the theories are that Josh somehow went to the cave and he slipped Susan's body somehow between the concrete in like, an open crevice or something, and now Susan's body will be down there forever, and that's why she hasn't been found. Josh was definitely aware of this cave. Files that were recovered from his computer included like a postcard showing the interior of Timpanganos National Cave monument in Utah. And the backside of the postcard, which was also scanned, had a note written in Josh's handwriting, which stated something like Nutty Putty Caves in Eureka, hole in the ground with a maze, something like that. And they also recovered from the computer thumbnail images from the 6th of December, the last day that Susan went missing, of Susan, that were actually searched on the day that Susan went missing. And one of those images was the opening of the Nutty Putty Cave. And then another was a picture of John Jones, the guy who I talked about in my Nutty Putty Cave video. And John actually died less than 2 weeks before Susan went missing. So isn't that so creepy? Like, he was fully Googling about this. I mean, it's not strange for him to be Googling about an incident like that occurring, in his very town. But at the same time, he made like notes about the cave and how it was a hole in the ground. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. And again, from my last video, the bomb squad actually entered the Nutty Putty Cave on 1st December 2009. And when they did that, they placed explosives around the opening of the cave. And the next day, on December 2nd, 2009, the opening of the cave was filled with concrete. And they believed that the concrete that they poured had gone down about 30 yards into the cave. And they believe like that was as much of a permanent closure as you could give the cave, because not only was like the entrance of the cave concreted, but the concrete had been poured like all the way into the cave, into the tunnels of the entranceway. So like you couldn't just like bang the, the front of the cave, crack it, and then shove something down there. Like you had to go all the way down. You know what I'm saying? So the county sheriff stated like the fact that Susan was seen alive after the concrete was poured. Is it porn or poured? Porn? So that sheriff was saying that because Susan was seen alive after the entrance was sealed up to the cave, there's no way that he believes that her body could be down there. So that was just one kind of like theory. I just thought it was an interesting connection to the two cases because I didn't know that they actually happened so close to each other, like literally in the same month. So Utah, what's up? So at this point, Joshua is back in Washington living with his father, Stephen. The rest of his family is there too. His sister, Alina, his sister, Jennifer, and his other brother, Jonathan. And Josh indicated that he would be now renting out the Powell household in Utah, and he was going to be living with his father because he had lost his job. Soon after this, a website called susanpowell.org was launched, and on the website, it was described as, the official website of Susan Powell, and many anonymous entries were made on this website defending Joshua and stating that he was a victim of a smear campaign by Susan's family, his, estranged sister Jennifer, who seems like she was taking Susan's side, like she believed that, Josh wasn't innocent. And on this website, they also stated that the LDS Church was against Joshua. This website was basically created to defend the Powell family. So I'm talking about Joshua and Stephen and stuff like that, because there was also additional posts made talking about Stephen Kosher. He was another man who disappeared around the same time, and he was a journalist that disappeared. So this website also made posts stating that Susan and Stephen Kosher, had run off to Brazil together. Like, where they got Brazil from, I have no idea. And obviously, the people who were suspected to be behind this website defending the Powells was Joshua and Stephen, father and son. And in late 2010, both men had claimed that Susan had actually abandoned her family and she was suffering from a mental illness, and that's why she ran off to be with another man, because mental illness makes you do that. Susan's family, on the other hand, were like, hell nah, that's not what happened. You know what happened to Susan. You bets to tell us. But again, it seems like, okay, they, suspected Joshua, but I don't know. I feel like nothing really was being done to help Susan and her family, to help find them. That's my opinion. What further made Josh and Stephen look guilty, as if that wasn't enough, everything, that was already evidence wasn't enough, is the fact that Stephen's obsession with Susan came out to the public, and they had actually learned this from a family friend who basically outed Stephen and was like, well, he was in love with his son's wife. Okay, so now the creepy part is that when Stephen's computer was seized, what did they find? They found 4,500 pictures of Susan, pictures that were taken without Susan's knowledge, including close-ups of specific body parts of Susan. And together with this, they also found other images and secret videos of other women and young girls. Creep. So later, on September 22nd, 2011, Stephen was actually charged with voyeurism and child pornography, but the charge of child pornography was later dropped. I guess there wasn't enough evidence. And there wasn't any direct evidence that linked Susan's disappearance to Stephen, so he wasn't indicted on any charges relating to Susan's disappearance. Stephen was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for inappropriate behavior and peeping at young girls. So then police actually ended up turning their attention to Josh's brother Michael after learning that he sold his car, a Ford Taurus, to actually a wrecking yard in Oregon after Susan disappeared. And then what's even creepier is that later on, he ends up ordering satellite images off the lot to spy on the car, I guess. But police beat him to it. They ended up finding the car, and when sniffer dogs actually went and did their little thing and sniffed around, they indicated that remains of a decomposing human were in the trunk. But when they DNA tested the car, they couldn't really, it was inconclusive. On September 14th, 2011, police actually went to a campsite that Joshua had frequented in the past. He was known to camp there because they believed that this could have been a possible gravesite for Susan. But after they, dug and they went down into the ground, they found nothing. But the soil had looked like it had been disturbed in that area. So I guess that's why they possibly thought that this was it. They were going to find Susan there. So during this time, obviously it's a high publicity case. The Powell family and the Cox family, so Susan's family, both of them just really began butting heads, obviously. And after police raided Stephen and Josh's home in 2011, Stephen and Josh went to the media and talked about these journals that Susan had written, claiming her love for Stephen, her father-in-law. Now, these journals did exist. They were Susan's journals, but obviously they didn't show what was written in it. They were just alleging that this was written in the journals. And Stephen later on goes and claims that him and Susan had been falling in love before she disappeared. And he stated that, whatever content was in her journals, keep in mind, these journals were old journals and they were written like literally when Susan was a teenager. And he stated that the contents of this journal, just had a mental blank. The contents of this journal supported his theory that she was mentally unstable and she ran away with another man. I don't know what he's talking about. They never kind of explained further, but maybe she had written something about falling in love with someone and they decided to use it against her. Following this, a judge actually issued an injunction against Stephen and Joshua, stating that they were no longer allowed to talk about the contents of Susan's journals, which is quite crazy that you can do something like that. You can't even talk about it. But I mean, obviously that's good. And they also ordered Stephen and Josh to return Susan's journals back to Susan's parents or destroy any of the journals that were left. So then Susan's father, Chuck Cox, decided to file for custody of his grandchildren, the two boys, after Stephen was arrested, because Stephen shouldn't be living in the same home as these boys. And a Washington court actually did grant custody to Susan's parents, ruling that Josh would have to move out of Stephen's home with the children if he wanted to regain custody of his kids. So then because of this, Josh ends up going and renting another home, but authorities later alleged that he actually never moved into this home. He just rented this home to satisfy the court's requirements to be able to get custody back of his children, but he still continued to live at Stephen's home. In late September of 2011, Josh's sister Jennifer actually stated that she believed that he had something to do with Susan's disappearance. And his other sister, Alina, had also been suspicious of him. However, she later on withdrew her accusations, stating that she believed at this point that investigators were just harassing her family. So this now brings us to February 5th of 2012. And this part is actually quite distressing. So I'm just giving you a warning right now. So keep in mind at this time, Joshua had limited custody of his kids. Susan's parents had temporary custody of Charles and Braden. So Joshua could only see the boys through supervised visits. So on this day, February 5th, 2011, social worker Elizabeth Hall took Charles and Braden to go for a supervised visit to visit their dad, Joshua. And she took them to Joshua's house in South Hill, the house that authorities believe that he only purchased or began renting to satisfy their requirements. So Elizabeth, the social worker, she was supposed to monitor the supervised visit between Joshua and the two boys. So this is what she states happened on that day. So Elizabeth states they arrive at Joshua's house at the South Hill property, and when the boys get out of the car, they end up running up to the front door, and Joshua is standing there waiting for them. And he states, "Hey boys, I have a surprise for you." And he takes them into the house and he shuts the door. And as the social worker is trying to enter, Joshua would not allow the social worker to enter the property and would not let her into the house. And she states that Joshua, had the boys inside and he would not let her through the front door. He wouldn't let her inside. And the boys were inside the home with Joshua and she could not supervise the visit, obviously. So she ends up calling 911 because now he's taken the boys inside the house and he is refusing to let the social worker inside. And then this happens.
Reporting. Hey, I'm on a supervised visitation for a court-ordered visit, and something really weird has happened. The kids went into the house, and the parent, the biological parent, whose name is Josh Powell, will not let me in the door. What should I do?
What's the address?
It's 8119, and I think it's 89th. I don't know what the address is.
Okay, that's pretty important for me to know.
I'm sorry, I can't. Just a minute. Let me get in my car and see if I can find it. Nothing like this has ever happened before at these visitations, so I'm really shocked. And I could hear one of the kids crying, but he still wouldn't let me in. Okay, it is just a minute. I have it here. You can't find me by GPS?
No.
Okay, it is, but I think I need help right away. He's on a very short lease with CSHS, and CPS has been involved. And this is the craziest thing. He looked right at me and closed the door. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm just waiting to know where you are.
Okay. It's 8119 189th Street, Court East, Puyallup, 98375. And I'd like to pull out of the driveway because I smell gasoline, and he won't let me in.
You want to pull out of the driveway because you smell gasoline, but he won't let you...
He won't let me in.
He won't let you out of the driveway?
He won't let me in the house.
Whose house
He's got
is
the
it?
kids in the house, and he won't let me in. It's a supervised visit.
I understand. Whose house is it?
Josh Powell.
Okay, so you don't live there, right?
No, I don't. No, I'm contracted to the state to provide supervised visitation.
I see. Okay. And who is there to exercise their visitation?
I am. And the visit is with Josh Powell.
And who
And
supervises?
he's the husband that I supervise.
So you supervise and you're doing the visit?
Yeah,
You're
I
supervising yourself?
I supervise myself. I'm the supervisor here.
Wait a minute. If it's a supervised visit, you can't supervise yourself. If you're the
I
visitor...
do supervise myself. I'm the supervisor for the supervised visit.
Okay, well, aren't you the one making the visit? Or is there another
I'm the
parent
one-
that you're supervising?
No, I'm the one that supervises. I pick up the kids at their grandparent,
Yes. And then who visits with the children?
Josh Powell.
Okay, so you're supposed to be there to supervise Josh Powell's visit with the children.
Yes, that's correct.
And how did
And he's the husband of missing Susan Powell. This is a high-profile case.
how did he gain access to the children before you got there?
I was one step in back of them.
Okay, so they
He
went
shut
into the
the
house
door
and
in
then he
my face.
locked you out.
Yes, he
Okay.
shut the door right in my face.
All right, now it's clear. Your last name?
My name is Elizabeth Griffin Hall.
Griffin Hall is hyphenated?
Yes.
And what's your phone number, Elizabeth?
This cell phone number is 360-990-9955.
And what agency are you with?
Foster Care Resource Network. And the kids have been in there by now approximately 10 minutes. And he knows
How
this
many
is
children?
a supervised visit. 2. Braden is 5 and Charlie is 7.
And the dad's last name?
Powell, Powell. L.
Two L's? Two L's at the end of Powell?
Yes.
His first name?
His first name is Josh.
Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, native?
He's white.
Date of birth?
I don't know. He's about 39.
How tall?
5'10", 150 pounds.
Hair color?
Brown.
Did you notice what he was wearing?
No, I didn't notice what he was wearing.
Is he alone then, or is anybody...
I don't know. I couldn't get in the house.
Are you in a vehicle now or on foot?
I'm in a vehicle. I'm in a Prius, a
color?
2010 Prius,
What color
with
is
the doors locked. But he hasn't opened the door.
Ma'am,
I rang the
careful.
doorbell and everything.
What color
I
is
begged him to let me in.
Elizabeth, please listen to my questions. What color is the Toyota Prius?
Gray, dark gray.
And the license number?
I don't know. I can look. 750ZMH.
Zebra Mary Henry?
Yes.
All right, we'll have somebody look for you there.
Okay, how long will it be?
I don't know, ma'am. They have to respond to emergency, life-threatening situations first. The first available deputy
Well,
is responding.
this could be life-threatening. He went to court on Wednesday, and he didn't get his kids back. And this is really, I'm afraid for their lives.
Okay, has he threatened the lives of the children previously?
I have no idea.
All right, we'll have the first available deputy contact you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Soon after taking the boys inside the house, the entire house explodes, killing Joshua and the 2 boys. Local authorities treated the case as a double murder-suicide because they believed that the explosion was deliberately caused. The boys were later determined to have died of carbon monoxide poisoning, obviously from the fire and the smoke. However, a hatchet was found at the scene, and judging through the boys' injuries, they believed that Joshua attacked the boys with the hatchet prior to the explosion. And the fire investigators also found 2 big 5-gallon cans of gasoline, like it was empty, which indicated that Joshua had taken these gas cans and spread them throughout the home to make a bigger impact on explosion. I mean, it was bad enough that he was going to make the house explode, but to kill them or to attack the children with a hatchet, like, what is wrong with people? Like, clearly something is wrong with him, but we just don't know what. Friends and relatives of Joshua told authorities that he had actually contacted them minutes to the boys' arrival to say goodbye, and a lot of them also had instructions, including his bishop, which is so weird because I thought he denounced the religion, receiving instructions from Joshua, about how to distribute his money and to shut off utilities. Records also stated that the day before the incident, Joshua withdrew $7,000, and he also donated all of the boys' toys and books to Goodwill. And Joshua ended up naming Michael as the main beneficiary to his life insurance policy. So I guess he was pretty organized, right? Create this mess and then he's just going to leave a little bit of organization behind. When authorities notified Stephen, his father, who was in jail at the time, he apparently did not seem very upset, but he was angry at the people that told him about what happened to Joshua and the kids. 2 weeks later, Stephen ends up invoking his Fifth Amendment rights to not answer any further questions about Susan's disappearance. He was like, that was that. No more. Don't want to deal with it anymore. Susan's family and friends believe that Stephen knows exactly what happened to Susan. He's just not talking. Charles and Braden were buried at Woodbine Cemetery, which actually has a memorial in place already for Susan, but Joshua's remains were just cremated. I mean, you might as well throw them out. On February 11, 2013, around the 1-year anniversary of the death of Joshua and his sons, Michael, Joshua's brother, ended up killing himself in Minneapolis, where he had actually moved to attend graduate school. He jumped from the roof of a parking garage. Police had actually questioned Michael a few times following, the car incident and the decomposing remains of humans in his car at that junkyard, but what happened with that, right? Nothing happened. But they basically said that Michael was just super evasive and didn't really answer many questions about what happened and about why he left the car at that location and why he was tracking it, yada, yada, yada. And Utah authorities have stated that they believe that Joshua and Michael were accomplices in the disappearance of Susan. Well, you think? Sometimes police say such dumb shit we think this happened. We know this happened, mate. You just didn't do anything about it. Or maybe it was just difficult. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe police work is really hard. Okay, let's just. On May 21st, 2013, police decided to close the active investigation into Susan's disappearance. They were like, it's done. Stephen Powell was released from jail in July of 2017 after serving a total of 7 years for his voyeurism and child pornography charges. And fortunately, on 23rd July 2018, exactly a year after his release, he passed away from natural causes. That's the Holy Spirit doing its job. So at this point, Susan remains a missing person, but given the fates of her sons, it's widely believed, that Joshua killed Susan. Duh. There were calls made in March 2018 to have Susan declared as dead, with her death being ruled a homicide. I tried to follow up on that to see if that actually happened, but pretty sure she's still a missing person. I don't know if that actually happened. But wow, what a sad and horrific ending to what seemed like a sad and horrific life together, like their marriage. From what I read, I don't see any happiness, any joy. And I'm sure there was some, you know, having children, that must have been Susan's joy. I wonder what prompted Susan to marry Joshua and to do it so quickly. Like, I wonder, was there some good in him? Did she just want to be married and have children? Like, I wonder what it was. The poor Cox family and those poor boys. It's clear the 3 Powell men were in on it. Michael clearly committed suicide out of guilt. He possibly couldn't, you know, maybe deal with what he had to cover up. And I don't even know how you move on. How do you live? Like, how do those Powell sisters live? And how does Susan's family live and continue life knowing what happened? Like, it's so horrific, so tragic. Ugh. What do you guys think? What do you think of this case? Do you think that on the camping trip is when Joshua killed Susan? Do you think he actually had the balls to do it while his children were with him? I mean, considering what he did to his kids, I wouldn't put it past him. Let me know your thoughts on this case below, guys. And remember, if you're not married yet or if you're not in a serious relationship, be aware of the people that you get into relationships with. They could be crazy. Let me know your thoughts on this case, guys. I am glad I covered it. It's definitely one of my most interesting cases. I hope you guys found it interesting. And thanks for watching. If you want to check out some of my other videos, click over here. And I will see you in my next one, guys. Besitos. Mwah. Bye.